In this video we're going to go over wall types. To access the wall types, you can go to the Architecture tab and click on the arrow below the wall. You can have architectural wall, structural wall, or wall by face. Structure also has a wall tab. They have a wall structural, which is the same as the other tab, and wall architectural. So we'll pick wall architectural, and it automatically defaults to this generic 8-inch wall. Similar to the beam, you can set some of the height criteria before we draw it. The walls are based on height, so opposed to the column that we were looking at where it was set to depth and it would place it based on the depth. So we're going to do height, and we're going to have this up to level 2 instead of unconnected. This will be the typical wall now when we place a wall. We could set an offset if we wanted, a negative, foot below level 1, or whatever the site requires. But the other thing to set would be the center line of the wall. So you can have the wall center line when you draw it. Core center line, which is the core of the wall, would be the center instead of the wall center line, which the core is the structural. So we could have face to finish, exterior, face to finish, interior, core face, and core. So core would be your structural layers, and the finish face would be your outside layers, and the wall center line would be the center line of the whole wall. When we're doing exterior walls, we probably want to set it to finish face interior, because when we draw a wall, we'll want to think about, if we change how the wall is made up, what face are we going to hold. So here I'll draw a rectangle, and I have it set on finish face interior, so it's going to draw, you see how the inside corner is where I'm placing it. So that means when I select this wall, the grip will be on this inside face. So if we adjust the wall is going to push outwards. So if I make this wall bigger or smaller, it's going to go from the outside in, or the inside out. It's going to go this outward direction. Another thing, if you hit tab on an item in Revit, you can toggle between two walls, and you can also select a chain of walls. So here, if you hit tab once, hovering over the wall, it'll select all of the walls, and that works with a lot of elements in Revit. So if you wanted to change it after you've already placed it, not a big deal. You can just come over here and say finish face exterior, so then all of the walls will be pushed in, or into the room, or it'll change the interior dimensions. So if you want to hold the interior dimensions of your room or house, then you'll want to set it to finish face interior, so that when we go on this next step, it'll hold. So like if you wanted it to be let's say we want it to be let's do 50 by 50. If we change this wall to a 12-inch wall, it's not going to change these interior dimensions. But if we do finish face exterior and we change this wall, it will add it just added 8 inches because it held this outside face and pulled it in. So what we'd want to do is change it back, change to hold the finish face interior, and then we can change the wall type. And see, it didn't change these dimensions. Dimensioning in Revit 2, we'll have a separate video, but you go to annotate, and then you have dimensions you can pull. You have aligned, linear, angular, and so it naturally wants to snap to the center line, and you can change that. It doesn't seem to make a difference, because wherever you want to dimension, it seems like you often have to use the tab button to get it to snap to where you want. So when you're in a dimension command, and if you forgot to set it to face a wall, you can hit tab and it will toggle through the available dimensions that are available. So you could, if you wanted to do the outside dimension, hit tab and kind of hover toward, before you hit tab, you can try to hover towards where you want it to snap to, and then it'll toggle through those. So let's create a 3D view. 3D view you can create with the, let's show this below the ribbon. There's a button up here for default 3D view. If you go to the view tab, there's a 3D view. And I actually have a quick key set to 3D, so all I have to do is hit 3D and it'll create a 3D view. And that can be found over here in the project browser. Just created this 3D view. You can also switch windows, tab views, so we can have a one view, or we can tile views. So if we hit switch window, it'll switch back to whatever window we want. But often I will use tiled views, and I change that to WT. Whatever view you're in, if you hit tile views, it will make that view the view on the left. If you have more than one views, it'll make it the upper left view. So I typically work with floor plan on the left and 3D view and elevation on the right. But it just depends on your workflow. So let's change these wall types. So we only need to select one wall type. And let's make a 6-inch wood stud wall. So we'll hit duplicate and rename it to 6-inch wood stud. And we're going to make it with siding. So you can't modify many of the wall features in this main edit type, the type properties window. You can set how it wraps. So if you have layers in your wall, it will try to wrap a certain way based on how you have these set. So if you have it set to exterior, it'll have the exterior finish wrap around. But that's not super important. That's mostly just kind of the way it looks when you get it on a plan. We can look at that later. But to edit the actual structure of the wall, the thicknesses and add layers, we'll go to Edit Structure, and it automatically has to have one core boundary layer. That's structure, and it's 8 inches right now. So we're going to make it a 6-inch stud, which a 6-inch stud is actually 5.5 inches. And we can click on this category on the little ellipses next to it, little 3 dots, and then we can make it, we'll make it a softwood lumber. Doesn't matter too much. You can create your own materials. And I'm actually going to modify this one so that it has a solid background. That is the same color, the 223, 192, 134 of the render color. And then that's the background fill color. And so I'm going to also give it a a wood texture as well. We'll just use this wood 1. So now that layer will show a solid light brown color with this wood pattern on top. So that's what we'd see in the plan. If you click preview on the bottom here, it'll kind of show you what your wall is going to look like. It defaults to this plan view, but you can also change it to the section view. In the section view, you can actually modify it further with some sweeps and reveals, which we'll get into that a little later. And I just escaped out of all of that. So it's always faster the second time. Edit structure, 5.5-inch wall, do softwood lumber, solid pattern. We'll do 223, 192, 134. and we'll give it a plywood hatch pattern. Alright, looks good to me. And you can actually, this would be the cut pattern. The surface pattern, I'm not going to give it a surface pattern just because we're not going to see it. It's going to have other layers on it that are going to block the view of it anyway. But in the cut, it'd be nice to see that and be easily recognize that this is going to be a wood pattern. Actually, we don't want plywood, I want wood one. Okay. See our pattern. Then we'll add another layer for our plywood sheathing. So we'll call this the substrate. And we'll make this plywood. We'll also give this a background color. Let's just give it the plywood. Hatch and no color. Give it a thickness of 0.5. The thickness of plywood is actually, I think structural plywood is 15-30 seconds, but they usually call it ½ inch. And we'll show it as ½ inch just to show construction tolerance, because none of this stuff is super straight. So we'll insert another layer above that for our finish layer, and we're going to call it finish 1. And we're going to do siding for this one. And let's do a search. And then I don't see siding, so let's just let us add the siding. So to add a material, you can go here to create new material, rename, and we'll just do 6-inch lap siding. Actually, let's rename it to siding. Inch lap. And we can add a material. If you click this little asset browser here, we can go to the appearance library. So we have this selected. Down at the bottom, we hit this to create our new siding material. We'll click this asset one, and then we can go down to siding under appearance library, and let's say we want 6-inch wood siding. And if you hover over this little arrow, it says replace the current asset in the editor with this asset. So it just added this 6-inch siding to here for the appearance. I'll click back over to graphics. For the background of the siding, I'm going to want solid, and then we can choose really any color, whatever color you want for your rendering. I'm just going to have gray. I'm going to choose black lines, and I'm going to go, so the drafting tab, all of these drafting patterns are scalable. So if you're in a 6-inch scale, they'll seem less dense than if you're at a smaller scale. So they will scale up with depending on the scale. In the model, it will actually have, that will actually be actual scale. That'll be the correct scale size. And so for some reason it's not letting me pick model. Oh yeah, because I want this to be, that's the cut pattern. I want to be in here. Why is it not letting me pick model? Is it because, so the background doesn't let you pick a model. It'll only let you pick for this background pattern. It only lets you pick a drafting pattern for some reason. And for the foreground pattern, which will be the pattern the 6-inch lap on top, we're going to go to the model, and this does not scale. This is actually 6-inch parallel lines, and we can create new ones here as well. And so now I want those to be black, and then the background will be, I'm going to make that light gray. And the cut pattern, I don't want, I'll just have it to solid gray, but I won't have another pattern on it. So that should change this layer. And lap siding's about 3/4, 7/8 inch thick. So once you pick a material, you can look up the actual construction on what the finished thickness is. But we can go with 3/4 inch for now. And so that is our wall. Now we need an inside layer, which will just be chipboard connected right to the wood studs on the interior, like a typical home. Well, I'll choose a finish layer. Go to gypsum wallboard, which will have this sand hatch. So there will be no pattern on the face, so we can actually choose sand again if we want to see actually the chipboard layer on the surface instead of the cut pattern as well. Alright, we'll give that a thickness of 5/8, and there is our wall. We can hit OK. Actually, we'll hit OK, and before we do this, we'll duplicate it and call it 6-inch wood stud wall with siding. Now, typically you want to duplicate it before you make changes so that we can keep our generic 8-inch wall the same. And so we have now our 6-inch wood stud wall with siding. All this looks good. We'll hit OK, and it will apply that to all of the wall. So all the walls, because they were that wall type, were modified, and we kept our 50-foot inside clear. Because we have this interior finish face selected, so everything it did, it added out this direction to the exterior of the building. There's quite a few things you can do with the walls. One of my favorite things that it can do, so let's see, is some of these pre-existing wall types have sweeps and reveals already added to them. So we can change it to this existing wall type. And if we go to this section, we can see that it actually has quite a bit of detail in here. So it's added some reveals in the brick. It has a sweep for the coping, or the let's look and see what it's called. So if you select it, edit type, brings up this window again. Again, you can see there's no information that we can really modify here, except for adding keynotes and some typical notes and some other wall type assembly stuff. But to actually adjust the wall, we'll hit edit structure, and you can see all their structural layers. They got the 1/2-inch chipboard on the inside, which is common for wall for residential. They've got 6-inch metal stud, and 6-inch metal stud is actually 6 inches. They've got plywood sheeting of 3/4 inch, thermal layer, air barrier because of the brick and the masonry unit. There'll be a gap per the construction type, and then they've got this brick and masonry units thicknesses here. And if you go to the section, it will open up the sweeps and reveals, and so whatever we have selected over here, it will highlight the layer over here. As you can see, because it's a two-part wall, these are grayed out, and so they are defined in here. Actually, well, these sweeps are defined in here. So this first, they have a parapet cap here. That's up here. So they have this parapet cap. So they have a predefined profile that's 16 inches wide, and it's concrete, and it's at the top, and they have a zero distance because it's at the top. So this is based on in relation to the top. So I was trying before, but you can't expand this window any further. So if you want to look at these, so they have material set, and then they have distance from the top. So if we look at the second one, it's -1.4 from the top of the wall, and they have a soldier course brick set. And they have a -1.4 from the top of the wall. They have it perpendicular to the face. It's on the exterior side, and then they have an offset value here. That's -3 5/8 inch. So if we set that to 0, you can see where it would go. And so basically the sweep starts out here, but because we want it to be into this brick, you would give it a value of -3 5/8. Hit apply and it'll put it back there. They have a precast down here as well. So the precast is this piece down here. Actually, I believe it's that piece there. And the sill, it's a precast sill, so it's like it would be like a stone or concrete band that'll go around the building. You can see over here, and that is set at 3'4" from the bottom of the wall, so or the base of the wall, and there is a 0 offset because it's in that layer. And then they have reveals as well, and those are these here, which are going to cut out little notches that they want to have set back. Basically, they'll have a brick set back into the wall, so that it kind of gives you that nice lines in the building as far as some depth and some feature there. So, and these are obvious, they're set from the base, and so no matter where you would draw this wall, it's going to put all of these elements already in there, so that you can not have to worry about doing this every time. This will be applied to the wall type. And so these wall types are really good for getting a lot of detail without a lot of manual work. There's other ways to do this, but this is probably the most efficient way because it's tied to the wall types. Now, we're going to cancel out of there because we don't want to change that wall type. But if you wanted to modify it, you would just hit to duplicate, and then you could play with how you want this to look. And so whatever house you've chosen, you can actually just take the rendering. If you don't want to actually use, what the picture was, you can change the materials, you can change some of the window locations based on how you would like. And so you could actually use these kind of wall types instead of the walls that you want. You just have to remember that all this will be a lot more detailing, because they'll have to detail how this stone is supported, and that a lot of those details will be found in that graphic standards, the architectural graphic standards student edition, for detailing how the brick is supported. So that is that wall type. Yeah, I really like the way these look and the kind of different looks you can get from them. They also have these another stacked wall, which is similar. It works a little bit different. As you can see, there's nothing in here. The other one had a lot of information, but this does not. And you have some different controls. Basically, it's stacking two walls, so it's got one wall type on the bottom, and so you can change this to any wall type that we actually have already made. So if you've made a wall type, Like if we wanted to use our 6-inch wood siding, we can put that on the bottom. Or we can, let's hit cancel, go back in, and we could actually put our 6-inch wall type on the top of that wall. You can see it's basically going to stack 2 walls. You'd want to make sure the 2 walls that you are stacking have the same structural core here. So this obviously is a little bit different. It looks like it's actually 6 inches wide instead of the 5.5 inches of wood stud. So when you're doing stacked walls, it's similar to this other wall type that we were looking at. The difference is that you've actually created 2 different wall types, and you can apply the different wall types here. So like we can actually add that brick on a metal stud on top of this that we were just looking at, and we can have a nice stacked wall that'll give us a similar look, but just is made up a little bit different. So let's see here. We'll compare the two. This is the wall we did before, and this is the wall that's stacked. And this is that other wall we were looking at. As you can see, it's actually a little bit different because here, I'll show you what you can do with the view if you want to get them close together. These little break lines, and you can actually make a wall section that, although is very far apart, basically you have cut the building in half and kind of brought it together. And so we can kind of compare here. Let's get to tab views. This wall is the 2 separate walls together, and then this wall, and as you can see, their cores actually match. So you'd want to make sure if you do the stacked wall that the cores match. And then we're using this kind of compound wall type. The core will be the same because it's going to define it all the way up the wall, all the layers, but we're just kind of utilizing it a little bit differently here. So a lot of stuff you can do with wall types. If you are, when we start getting our floor plans done, under annotate, we can tag walls, and we'll see that on the example floor plan. We'll need to tag all your walls, and we'll have wall types that we can go to. Excuse me. So we can edit the type. So right now the tag is blank. So to get a wall type in there, of course the stacked walls don't work the same, so let's not use a stacked wall. Let's use this other wall. This is not a stacked wall. So in a typical wall, it's interesting. I wonder. So I think so. Yeah, interesting. You can tab in and select the different wall types in a stacked wall. So what we want to do is give it a type mark. I believe that is what the tag is using. Let's see here. Yep, that's fine. Basically what it's saying is that I have 2 walls tagged A. So let's change this to a different wall. Use the type mark value and give it another designation. And this will correspond to your wall type schedule. So if you go to a wall type schedule, it'll show this thickness with these layers, and you'll call out each layer and any additional notes like waterproofing and any kind of base or anything else that you want to call out, and we can look at the example PDF for that. And then this other wall will be wall type A, and this is how we'll designate them. I guess one more thing before we close. If you go to View, Schedules, this is important for a lot of other things that we'll be doing, is you can schedule the wall types. So if you select in here, hit W, it'll go down to the first W, which happens to be wall. You can make a wall schedule, and so often you would want the type mark, because that's what we just added, and then any other data that you'd want to put in here, length or height. In this case, we'll put wall type, and let's put its unconnected height. Should be 9 or 10 feet, whatever our floors are set at. So it'll bring up this wall. So now it'll give us a wall type. Here's any walls that we have drawn that do not have a wall type associated to it. And so this is showing us that stacked wall, that there's a 3-foot CMU on metal studs in the bottom, and then a 7-foot tall on top, a 7-foot tall wall on top. We can actually assign them values here. And see, it changed both of those, and we can call it C2, and it's going to say, hey, you've already got this wall will be applied to all the walls of this type, and then you'll see it populate there. The other thing we can do in here is sort by type mark, and then itemize every instance. We can uncheck that, and it'll only give us the wall types that we have. And yeah, sure, we'll save the project. You hit trim to trim up these walls because we had changed them, and I believe because we held that core aside, hopefully it's still 50 feet, and it is still 50 feet because everything we've done is based on this interior finish face. So all the changes we made have gone towards in or out from the interior to the exterior. So we've actually been able to hold our dimensions. So it's something to think about when you're laying stuff out and you think you might be changing the way walls lay out, so that you know, you can not have to redo a bunch of work if you've made changes and it's messed up your dimensions. So I think that'll be good for now. There's a lot to talk about and think about with walls. Obviously, if you can change the shading and whatnot, so the shading that we have given it has texture that will show up because of the material, but if we go to realistic, it will actually give us a realistic. So if you wanted to do a rendering and print this out for a client, and we'll actually do that on our 50% CD set, we'll kind of make these nicer renderings so that you know, it would be something you would show to a client, so that they can really picture your what their building is going to look like. So anyway, I think that'll be all for tonight. So thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or comments or anything, or have any other questions. If you've tried some things and they aren't quite working, let me know, and we can go through it. And, YouTube is a great source. It's how I learned a lot of what I do anyway. I didn't actually have any formal Revit training, so it's all been on the job, but been doing it for a long time. So definitely, if you see any other little tips and tricks that you find too, those are good things to point out to me and the rest of the class, because the drafting community is quite a large one, and there's lots of just different boards. Revit City is one that I often go to, and to get help and to be able to see what other people, because there's quite a lot to be able to do in this program, and a lot of people have already done it, so why reinvent the wheel? So anyway, thank you.